But the next couple of years are going to be crazy because it seems like the Big Ten and the SEC especially are like kind of just taking as many colleges as possible. Like the thought of the UCLA and USC being in the Big Ten 5, 10 years ago would be just blasphemous. It'd be ridiculous. How do you think the college landscape's going to change if you really are going to be at Nebraska for 8 years? You're probably going to see it. Do you think there's an opportunity that the Big Ten and the SEC and maybe one other big conference splits away from the NCAA with all this new NIL stuff going on and making their own like league almost?
You know, that's a great question. I've heard people say that. I don't know that. I do think to your point, I think the Big Ten has kind of become like this coast to coast, almost like college's NFL. You know, I mean, we from
2024 it will be coast to coast.
Piscataway to UC, to LA, like we got everything in between. So it becomes a really national brand, and I think that's actually kind of good for us. Like when I look at Texas. I want Nebraska to be Texas's Big Ten team. When I look at like west of here, all the way till there's all those prospects from Arizona to Utah in between.
Arizona
that doesn't have a place to go if they want to play in the Big Ten. And so as the Big Ten, as we go to 16 teams, and the Big Ten's getting 3 to 4 teams in every year to the college football playoff. Hey, come to Nebraska. I think that's one of the things I saw in the SEC. Certainly the SEC, and then
we have to defeat them.
Yeah,
we got to beat them.
I think something like that helps Nebraska because in my opinion, I loved, like I got to play 2 years in the Big 12, 2 years in the Big 10. I loved when we got to go to the Big 10, but now hindsight, I almost feel like it hurt us to go to the Big 10 because we recruited so much, California, especially Texas. And I know coaches now thinking about it from the coach's perspective. You're sitting in these living rooms in Texas and being able to at least tell families, you'll be able to see these guys play a couple times a year at Baylor, at Texas Tech, A&M at the time. You'll be able to see them. And then, you can still come to Nebraska. Now Nebraska, before UCLA and USC's join it, it's kind of like you're going to fly over Michigan, Ohio, all these states just to play at Nebraska. And you can't necessarily recruit Texas as well because we don't play there at all anymore.
Right.
So I feel like getting to the West Coast, like USC and UCLA, that helps Nebraska a little bit more because now if you're recruiting, California and the West Coast a little bit more, you'll at least be able to say, hey, we're closer than all these other fucking big time schools, on the East.
And plus, like when I was at Baylor, I could tell people like, hey, 9 out of our 12 games or 10 out of our 12 games this year are in the state of Texas. Well, that's going to change. The Big 12 is changing. Now they're bringing in Cincinnati and some other teams. So now you are leaving the state every year. Now, even, Texas and Texas A&M, now as they go into the SEC, they're playing in Alabama, they're playing in Georgia. So all of college football is becoming pretty regional. Like I'm old school, man. I miss like Pitt, Penn State, and then I miss, Nebraska playing Colorado, Nebraska OU. Like I miss all the old school games, but it's what's happened. It is what it is, right? So I think this move with USC and UCLA coming in, the Big Ten moving up, the playoff expanding to 12 teams, it's the perfect time for Nebraska. It's the perfect time for us. It's one of the major reasons I was like, I see an opportunity here.
Yeah.